Welcome everyone to this week's video. Today we are on Fish Friday number 257 and we have a good one for you today. Today's fish is another very common fish throughout North America and one that I'm surprised that we have not covered on the channel because we have talked about this in a previous video on why this fish might be the most important fish in terms of Fish Fridays and this channel. Today's fish that we're going to be talking about is, bam, the yellow bullhead. Now, the yellow bullhead, or scientific name, Amyris natalis. Again, that's Amyris natalis. It is part of the family Ictaluridae, which is the family of freshwater catfish that are native to North America. So this family is going to be your family. Same for the flathead catfish, the channel catfish, basically most of the catfish you think of when you think North American catfish. Now, the yellow bullhead is native to central and eastern United States, basically from the Rio Grande River to the East Coast. And they have been introduced west of the Rio Grande, and they've gotten so spread out through stockings and the like that you're probably harder pressed to find a body of water that doesn't have yellow bullhead in them. This fish has gone across the entirety of the United States and is found in almost every habitat, which is why in my habitats I say they live on the bottom of their habitats, because they are just found in habitat. If it's water, they can be found in it. Mud, rock, sand, clay, any sort of substrate, no vegetation, tons of vegetation, slow currents, swifter currents. I mean, they can be found in basically any body of water. Now, bullhead catfish do tend to prefer slower currents and backwaters, usually with highly turbid waters. I should also say that they can handle crystal clear, pristine waters, all the way to some of the most polluted waters you can imagine. They do seem to prefer, slower currents, backwaters, usually very turbid, dark colored waters, but essentially they can be found in just water, for lack of a better word. So, you have a catfish. How do you know that it's a yellow bullhead? So, the first thing first is the bullheads are what I would call a medium-sized catfish. They average around 20 to 25 centimeters, which is 8 to 10 inches. And they usually weigh about 450 grams, which is around a pound. Now, they can get much larger, up to 46 to 48 centimeters, which is 18 and a half inches, around there, and around 3.2 kilograms, which is 7 pounds. I've never, ever seen a bullhead get close to that. The biggest bullhead I've ever seen was probably around 3 pounds. So a 7-pound bullhead would be an absolute monstrosity. But they do have this yellow to olive back. Sometimes they'll even get darker all the way to black, as you can see here, especially the younger ones. And their coloration is very dependent upon their waters. So the darker the water that they live in, the darker the coloration on their back. But like other catfish, they do have barbels. Let's see, I believe there is 4 pairs, so 8 total. They do have this rounded anal fin, kind of a smaller dorsal fin, and yes, they do have spines in their pectoral and dorsal fins, as most catfish do. They do have the fleshy adipose fin. It's a stockier fish with a thicker caudal peduncle, which is the part of the tail right before the caudal fin. And then their caudal fin is very rounded, maybe a slight notch, but it's a very rounded. It is not forked. So that's kind of how you tell that it is a bullhead, is that you have this rounded caudal fin, slight notched, not forked. and that kind of gets you your bullhead. So how do you go from there to what is a yellow bullhead? And actually the key is to look at the barbels right here, more specifically looking at the chin barbels. And here is a good representation right here. So the reason why you want to look at the barbels, especially the chin barbels, is to distinguish this from a black or a brown bullhead. Is a lot of people would look at this and call it maybe a black or a brown bullhead if they don't know. Especially brown bullheads actually have some other characteristics, but this is very obviously a yellow bullhead. And the reason why is those chin barbels are not dark. And they can be a little bit darker, but there's actually a very neat trick if you have one in hand. If you push the chin barbels onto the belly of the fish, the chin barbels are going to be the same basic coloration as the coloration of the belly. Whereas black and brown bullheads, their chin barbels are actually significantly darker than their belly skin. They can be slightly darker, but they're usually just about the same color. So that's actually the best and easiest way to distinguish yellow bullhead from other bullhead. So really, really neat fish, and a very easy characteristic to help define it. Now, just like basically every other catfish, they're opportunistic feeders. They're usually feeding at night, eating anything that they can find, which is why they're one of the most common fish that are caught when people are going and fishing with young kids. If you go to, especially in rural areas, a lot of people, grandparents, take their kids out to like farm stock ponds and the like. And these farm stock ponds usually have black bullhead or yellow bullhead in them. And since the bullhead will eat anything, they'll even go after normal lures. But they'll also go after like shrimp. They'll go after floating corn. So they're just really easy to catch, and it really helps them. Something that was interesting to me is they are actually a very social catfish, which that's not as common as you might think. And it makes a lot of sense why they are so numerous in bodies of water. And keep in mind, this fish can be extremely numerous in bodies of water where it's found, especially if it's a little more polluted and a little more turbid with less oxygen. It can actually survive and just sort of socialize with itself while self-eating itself. Basically, I mean, like, the bigger fish will eat the younger fish, and as they grow, it'll just be like sort of a cycle. But apparently they are very heavily dependent on pheromones for their social status. That was actually a very neat thing. Something else that's interesting about the yellow bullhead is they do create monogamous pairs during breeding season. There was some dispute whether it was just the male or male and female created their nest, their cavity nest. And then there's some dispute afterwards about whether the adults actually protect the cavity from predators. But almost everything was pretty evident that they were monogamous pairs, meaning that the male and female would pair for each other for the breeding season. I do not think this is a situation where they're monogamous for life. I think they're just monogamous for a season. But for the interesting fact that we're going to end the video on, and the one that you might be thinking about because we kind of covered this in a previous video, is that this is the fish that caused me to major in fisheries in college. So when I was in college and thinking of going for my master's, my first idea was to do a study on the greater roadrunners in Texas, specifically doing a diet study. And my professor said, well, you need to figure out what really makes you passionate, because if you don't do what you're passionate about for a thesis, you are not going to enjoy your life. So I went back home and was talking with my friends that I was going fishing with very late at night into this farm stock tank. We had this little fiberglass boat. We were just hanging out, and we caught this fish, and they were like, "Ooh, what is this?" And I was like, "Oh, this is a yellow bullhead." And they're like, "Oh, well, how do you know it's a yellow bullhead?" And I basically described exactly like I described to you, the caudal fin, the chin barbels, and everything. They're like, "Wow, that's so neat." They were a little more excited than that, but I was like, yeah, it was. And then I realized that fish was actually the group of animals that I was most passionate about and had actually cared about the most throughout my life. Yes, I do like birds. Yes, I do like snakes. Yes, I do like reptiles, everything like that. But fish is what I actually cared about. So essentially, from that point on, that is where all of my college path took me through all of the fisheries path. And so this is essentially the fish that you could honestly say kind of set the path of my life and my livelihood. Like, yes, I'm not doing specifically fish work, but this is the fish that caused me to really finish my fisheries degree, which caused me to go to, the river authority, doing water quality and bacterial monitoring and learning that sort of thing, which just progressed and got me and Mrs. Ping to where we are. So literally everything that is there, kind of a butterfly, is all because of this species. This is what led one step or other to put me where the position that I am today. So it was just kind of something that I think about, especially as an adult with an infant. You look back in your life and you're like, how did I get here? In a good way. And it's like, wow, you could really point that to that one yellow bullhead that I showed my friends how to identify it at 2:30 in the morning on a farm stock pond. So to me, it was a very interesting fact. Maybe not to you, but this fish is the reason why Fish Friday basically exists. But thank you guys so much again. I really appreciate it. Hope to see you again. Please leave a like, comment, subscribe if you do. I'd really appreciate it. Hope to see you again. If you'd like to support the channel, please click the link down below. It is by no means expected, but very much appreciated. Regardless, take care of yourselves, take care of your loved ones, and peace.